I knew something wasn't right. Not immediately, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, like something in the background shifting. Just enough for you to notice, but not enough to explain. It started with a feeling, that subtle kind of discomfort, the kind you can't point to, the kind that sits in your chest and refuses to leave. And then I saw her, standing there, again, same spot, same posture, same cold, watchful stare, right at the edge of my vineyard. Now out here, you don't get random visitors. You don't get people just passing by. There's no sidewalk, no shops, no reason for anyone to just stop, especially not someone who keeps coming back, day after day, at the exact same time, standing in the exact same place, watching, not admiring, not curious, watching. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't coincidence. It wasn't sluchai. This was intentional. I remember the first time I noticed her. I didn't think much of it. Just a silhouette in the distance. Someone walking along the road. Out here, that's rare, but not impossible. So I ignored it, went back to what I was doing. But the second time, something felt off. She stopped, right where my fence begins. Didn't move, didn't look around, just stared. At the vineyard, at the land, at me. Too long, way too long. Still, I told myself, you're overthinking this. It's nothing, just someone curious. But then it happened again, and again, and again. Same time of day, same exact spot, same silence. That's when it stopped feeling random and started feeling deliberate. You have to understand something about this place. This land, it wasn't just property to me. I bought this land 3 years ago. Not for investment, not for flipping, not for status, but for peace. Real peace. The kind you can't buy inside a city. The kind that doesn't come with neighbors watching your every move.
The kind that doesn't come with rules written by strangers who think they have the right to control how you live. I wanted space, freedom, silence, and I found it out here. No crowded neighborhoods, no traffic noise, no late-night disturbances. No HOA letters showing up in your mailbox because your grass grew half an inch too high. Just land, open sky, endless horizon, and rows. And rows. And rows of grapevines. Every single one of them. Built by me, with my own hands. I remember planting the first row. The soil was rough, unforgiving, but I worked it, day after day, morning to sunset. Slowly, it changed. The land softened, the vines grew, and over time, this place became something more. It became mine. Every morning. I had a routine. Wake up early, before the sun fully rises. Step outside. Feel the air, that cool, quiet air that only exists before the world wakes up. I'd walk through the vineyard, slowly, no rush, checking the soil, looking at the leaves, making sure everything was as it should be. And in those moments, there was nothing else. No stress, no noise, no problems. Just me and the land. It was quiet in a way most people never experience. And I protected that silence very carefully, because once you lose that kind of peace, it's almost impossible to get it back. Now, about half a mile down the road, there was a gated community. You could see it from a distance. Perfect houses, perfect lawns, perfect order. Everything looked controlled. And of course, it had an HOA. The kind that sends letters for everything. Paint color slightly off? Letter. Trash bin visible too early? Letter. Car parked in the wrong spot? Letter. That kind of place. Now here's the important part. property was not part of it, not even close. Different zoning, different boundary lines, different jurisdiction, different authority.
I made sure of that before I signed anything. Double-checked it, triple-checked it, because I've heard the stories. HOAs controlling what you plant, what you build, what you change, even what kind of fence you're allowed to have. I wasn't about to live like that, not after choosing this kind of life. So when I bought this land, I made one thing absolutely clear to myself. No one controls this property, except me. And for a while, that's exactly how it was, until she started showing up. At first, she was just a figure in the distance, a woman walking along the road. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. But then, she started stopping, right where my fence begins, looking in. Not casually, not briefly, intently, like she was studying something, like she was looking for something. And every time, it lasted too long. Long enough to make you uncomfortable. Long enough to make you aware. You're being watched. Still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's curious. Maybe she likes the view. Maybe she's just bored. But then it kept happening. Again, and again, and again. Same time, same place, same stare. No variation, no explanation. That's when I knew. This wasn't random. And then one afternoon, everything changed. The sun was lower, the air felt heavier. I was near the fence line, checking one of the outer rows, and that's when I saw her again. But this time, she didn't stop at a distance. She stepped closer, closer than before, right up to the fence. And then, she called out, not politely, not casually, demanding, like she expected a response, like she expected obedience. I walked over, calm, steady, no rush, no emotion. And before I could even say anything, she started. "You're violating community standards." I paused, just for a second, because I genuinely thought I misheard her. Community standards? Out here? I looked around, at the land, at the vineyard, at the empty space between us and anything resembling a community. And I let out a small laugh, not to mock her, not intentionally, but because the statement itself didn't make sense. And that was the moment everything shifted. Her expression changed instantly, sharp, cold, offended, like I had just challenged something she believed was unquestionable. I realized then, this wasn't a misunderstanding. So I explained, calmly, clearly. This property isn't part of your HOA. Simple, direct, final. Or at least, that's what I thought. Because instead of backing off, she stepped closer, lowered her voice, and said something that stayed with me. Everything around here falls under our influence. Not jurisdiction, not law, influence. And that word told me everything. This wasn't about rules. This wasn't about legality. This was about control, perception of control, belief in control. And people like that, they don't back down easily. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, because I knew there was nothing to argue. So I just said, not this land, and I walked away. But as I did, I felt it, that shift, that tension, that invisible line being drawn, the kind that tells you, this isn't over, not even close. And deep down, I already knew, this was just the beginning, part one ending. I thought I had left HOA problems behind, miles away, locked behind gates and rules that didn't apply to me. But standing there, at the edge of my vineyard, with that woman watching, refusing to back down, I realized something chilling. I hadn't escaped it. Not completely. Because some people don't need authority to act like they have it. And from that moment on, everything started changing. Slowly at first,
once. They hadn't left me.
At first, it didn't feel like a threat, not something serious, not something urgent. It felt small, annoying, insignificant. The kind of thing you brush off without thinking twice. The kind of thing you tell yourself, it's nothing. Just ignore it. It'll go away. And for a while, I believed that. I wanted to believe that. Because the alternative meant this wasn't random. And if it wasn't random, then it was intentional. And if it was intentional, then it wasn't going to stop. But in the beginning, it was easy to dismiss, because problems like this, they don't usually arrive loudly. They don't come crashing in. They don't announce themselves. They start quietly, so quietly, you almost miss them, with small things, petty things, the kind of things that seem too minor to matter, too ridiculous to take seriously. And that's exactly why they're dangerous. Because you don't react. You don't respond. You let them slide. And while you're doing that, they grow, slowly, silently, unnoticed, until one day, you look around and realize they're not small anymore. It started with notices, not official ones, not legal documents, not anything that actually carried weight. No stamps, no seals, no authority. Just paper, cheap paper, the kind you print at home, slightly wrinkled, folded once, and taped directly onto my gate. Not carefully, not respectfully, just stuck there, like a warning, or maybe like a statement. No envelope, no name, no signature, no accountability. Just bold letters across the top. Violation. The first time I saw one, I didn't react. I just stood there, coffee in my hand, morning still wrapped in silence, birds in the distance, wind barely moving, everything calm, everything normal, except that paper, hanging on my gate like it belonged there. For a moment, I genuinely thought it had to be a joke.
Some kind of mistake, because nothing about it made sense. But still, I reached out, pulled it off the gate, flattened it slowly between my hands, and read it. Unauthorized agricultural activity. I remember blinking. Once. Twice. Reading it again. Slower this time. Trying to understand if there was something I was missing. Agricultural activity? On farmland? I looked up. At the vines. At the soil. At the land I had spent years building. And I laughed. Not loud. Not mocking. Just confused. A quiet laugh that comes out when something makes no sense. Because it didn't. None of it did. I stood there for another moment, holding that paper, letting the absurdity settle in. Then I crumpled it. Not aggressively, just casually, like it didn't matter. Because in my mind, it didn't. I tossed it aside, turned around, and went back to my routine. Back to the vines, back to the land, back to the silence I had built. And in that moment, I made a decision. Without even realizing it, I chose to ignore it. Because in my mind, that was the end of it. Just someone being ridiculous. Nothing more. Nothing worth my time. Nothing worth my attention. But the next day, there was another one. Same spot, same gate, same cheap tape holding it in place, and the same word at the top, violation. This time, I didn't laugh. I just stared at it, longer than before, because now, it wasn't random anymore. Now it was a pattern. I pulled it off slowly, unfolded it, and read, visual disruption. I paused, let those words sit in my mind. Then I looked up, slowly, scanning the vineyard, row by row, line by line, everything in place, everything clean, everything exactly how it should be. No mess, no chaos, no disruption, just land, open, orderly, quiet, and yet, to someone,
It was a problem. That thought lingered, longer than I expected. Not because I believed it,
but because I didn't understand it. And when something doesn't make sense, it stays with you. The next day, another notice, then another and another. They kept coming, one after another, relentless, consistent, predictable, each one slightly different, but all carrying the same tone: authority, control, accusation. Non-compliant land usage, improper agricultural structure, violation of community aesthetics. Words designed to sound official, words designed to sound powerful even when they weren't, and every single one was completely meaningless. No legal authority, no jurisdiction, no power. Just noise. And that's exactly how I treated it. Noise. Something in the background, something not worth engaging with, something that would disappear if I didn't give it attention. Because people like that, they feed on reaction. They escalate when you respond. They push harder when you push back. So I didn't. I stayed quiet. I stayed focused. Day after day. Same routine. Wake up, step outside, see the notice, take it down, read it once, shake my head, throw it away, and move on. Back to the vineyard, back to the silence, back to the life I chose. But then, something changed. Not loudly, not suddenly, but in a way that felt different, heavier, more real. It started with a feeling. That same feeling from before, the one you can't explain, the one that sits in your chest and doesn't leave. That morning started like any other, early, quiet, still, the kind of stillness that feels peaceful, but also unusual, like something is waiting. I made my coffee, stepped outside, took a breath. Everything looked the same, everything felt the same, but something wasn't. I started walking. Same path, same direction, same routine I had followed for years. And then, I stopped. Mid-step. No sound, no warning, just instinct. Something told me, look down.
And that's when I saw it. Tire tracks. Fresh ones. Deep. Clear. Cutting straight through the dirt path, leading into my property. I didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. Because in that moment, everything shifted. They hadn't just passed by, they had entered. They had driven in, on my land, without permission, without hesitation. And that changes everything. Because out here, there's an understanding, an unspoken rule. You respect boundaries. You respect land. You don't cross that line. But someone did. And they didn't just cross it. They ignored it. I followed the tracks slowly, step by step, carefully, watching where they led, through the gate, down the path, closer and closer, to the heart of the vineyard, then turning and leaving, like it was nothing. Whoever it was, they didn't hesitate. They didn't second guess. They didn't act like they were doing anything wrong. And that was the part that stayed with me. Not the tracks, not the act itself, but the confidence behind it. That's when I knew ignoring this was no longer an option. And that's when everything changed.
2 officers stepped out of the car, calm, professional, measured. No rush, no aggression, just observation. The kind of presence that doesn't react first, but notices everything. And yet, there was something else, something subtle. Confusion. You could see it in their faces, because nothing about this place looked like a problem. No chaos, no damage, no disturbance. Just land.
quiet, open, still. The kind of place that doesn't attract complaints. The kind of place that doesn't need attention. And yet, here they were, standing in the middle of it, because someone called them. One of the officers stepped forward, slow, deliberate, not confrontational, just doing his job. He stopped a few feet away from me, looked around once more, then back at me, and said, "Sir, we received a complaint." His voice was neutral, careful, like he already knew this might not be what it seemed. I nodded, not surprised, not confused, because at that point, I already knew. I knew exactly where this was coming from. I knew exactly who was behind it. And I knew this moment had been building, slowly, step by step, from the notices to the trespassing, to this. But I didn't interrupt. I didn't explain. I let him continue, because sometimes the truth is stronger when it reveals itself. He glanced at the paper in his hand, then said, "Reports of illegal land use and zoning violations." Illegal. That word hung in the air, heavy, sharp. For a moment, everything went quiet. Even the wind felt like it had stopped. Because words like that, they change the tone of everything. They take something simple and turn it into something serious. But before I could respond, she stepped in, fast, confident, like she had been waiting for that exact moment, waiting for the word illegal, waiting for authority to arrive, waiting for validation. She pointed toward my vineyard.
Sharp movement, precise, like she was presenting evidence in a courtroom, and said, "This property is violating HOA standards." HOA standards to the police on land they didn't control. There was a brief pause, the kind of pause where reality and expectation collide, where what was said doesn't quite match what exists. The officer turned to her, slowly, then back to me, and right there, in that moment, I could tell he already knew. Something wasn't adding up, because experienced officers, they read situations quickly. They don't just listen to words, they observe, they measure, they compare. And nothing about this scene matched her claim. I didn't argue, didn't defend, didn't react emotionally, because I didn't need to. Facts don't require emotion, they require clarity. So I turned, walked inside, slow, controlled, not rushing, because I knew. This wasn't a moment to react, it was a moment to prove. I grabbed the documents, everything, property lines, zoning approvals, purchase records, every piece of paper that defined this land, that proved, without question, this property was mine and outside her reach. I walked back out. The officers were waiting. She was waiting. The tension, still there, unspoken but heavy. I handed the documents over, calm, steady, certain, no hesitation. Because when you know you're right, you don't rush. They took the papers, started reviewing them, carefully, not skimming, not rushing, page by page, line by line. And in that moment, time slowed down. Everything around us faded. No movement, no sound, just the quiet shuffle of paper and the weight of the situation settling in. I watched them, not nervously, but attentively, because I already knew the outcome, but I also knew this was the moment it would become real, not just to me, but to her. She stood there, arms crossed, trying to hold her confidence, trying to maintain control, but you could see it. Small cracks forming, tiny shifts in posture, subtle changes in expression, because deep down, she was starting to feel it, that uncertainty, that doubt. The officer finished reading, looked at his partner. A brief glance. No words needed. They both understood. Then he looked up, straight at her, and said, "Ma'am, this property is not part of your HOA." Silence. complete silence. The kind of silence that feels loud, that fills the space, that forces reality to settle in. Her confidence? Gone. Just like that. No transition, no warning. Just gone. For a brief moment, she didn't speak, didn't move, didn't react. Because sometimes, when the truth hits, it takes a second to process. But she wasn't done. People like that, they rarely are. She tried to argue, tried to regain control, tried to reshape the situation, saying things like, "It affects our community. We have authority over this area. This can't be allowed." But now, her words sounded different, less certain, less powerful. Because the moment authority is challenged, confidence fades. The officer didn't hesitate, didn't debate, didn't entertain it. He simply said, "No, you don't." And that was it. That was the moment everything flipped. The second officer stepped forward. Different tone now. More serious. More direct. No longer just observing. Now addressing. He looked at her. Not aggressively, but firmly. And asked, "Did you enter this property without permission?" The question landed hard. Because now, the focus had shifted. Completely. She froze. Didn't answer. Didn't move. Didn't even look at him directly. And in that moment, for the first time, she wasn't in control. The power dynamic changed. Instantly. The conversation was no longer about me, no longer about the vineyard, no longer about the complaint. It was about her.
Her actions, her decisions, her overreach. And I just stood there, watching, quiet, still. Because sometimes, the best thing you can do is nothing. No interruption, no reaction, no interference. Just let the truth do its work. They issued a warning, clear, direct, unmistakable. No trespassing, no false reports, no overstepping authority. Every word, measured. Every word, final. And just like that, it was over. The officers turned to me, apologized, professional, respectful, because they understood this situation should never have reached this point. They walked back to their cars, engines started, doors closed, and then they were gone. Silence returned, the same silence that had been there before, but now it felt different, heavier, resolved. And she didn't say a word, didn't look at me, didn't argue, didn't try again. She just turned and walked away, slowly, quietly, without control, without authority. And in that moment, everything became clear, darged, final extended ending. Some people think power comes from control, from rules, from titles, from the ability to tell others what to do. But real authority, it doesn't come from belief. It doesn't come from assumption. It doesn't come from confidence. It comes from truth, from law, from boundaries that actually exist. And the moment you ignore those boundaries, the moment you step beyond what's real, everything falls apart. She called the police on my vineyard, thinking she was right, thinking she had power, thinking she was in control. But in the end, the truth doesn't bend. It doesn't adjust. It doesn't care what you believe. And she learned that the hard way. Because when it was all said and done, when the noise faded, when the authority was tested, there was only one thing left standing: the truth.
She had zero authority.